Real excited here. Hello, Nevada County. This is David Clark Carroll with the Nevada County Tech Connection. We are an initiative of the Nevada County Economic Resource Council looking at manufacturing, tech, arts, marketing, pretty much everything that encompasses tech, which in 2021 is just about everything. Real excited to have Conrad Sisk here with me tonight. He is the technical director for the Center for the Arts. And I've been wanting to get someone on here to talk about their phenomenal new state-of-the-art theater, which, while that is a virtual backdrop, is displayed behind him. So that's what it looks like for everyone who didn't make it to the one show, correct? That happened before the shutdown. To catch a phenomenal live stream suit they've been doing. So first off, thanks for joining us, Conrad. This has been a long time coming, and we're real glad to have you.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about your background. I mean, you came to this from the world of sound. Let's just give the people a lowdown on kind of what got you into the seat you're in today.
Yeah, cool. Well, the short version of the long story, I got into sound from playing music. So I played as a kid and got my dad dragged me along to open mics when I was a teenager. And, sometimes the old guys there didn't like wires. And so I started playing with PAs kind of that way. Like, oh, why isn't this working? Oh, it's just, and then I got a little older and started running the PAs and helping with microphones for the bands that I was playing in, and eventually got some, sound work as like a supplement to the rest of my income. So for probably, I think for 6 years, I was making a living just playing and teaching, and then running sound for this band called Monkey Fist that played really rough dive bars outside of Richmond, Virginia. And just, learned a whole lot there, and also avoided a lot of fights, and, it's just kind of a rough scene there. So I moved to California in 2014 and was interested in doing, transitioning over to doing more like serious sound on big stages with pro bands. And I got lucky and found a couple jobs here doing that, freelance things, and have been able to do it full time for the last 4 years now. And then I was hired by the Center for the Arts, I think in February of last year, maybe, anticipating their opening as one of their sound engineers, and have been really fortunate to continue with them with, through the live stream series, running the sound there. And we had a really excellent production manager who had been kind of figuring out how we could live stream, just like jumped into it and made it happen. And he decided to move back east 3 months ago. And that's when I was put in the technical director position. So I'm still doing the sound there and mixing, but now learning a little bit more about the video and the computer side of it, and kind of coordinating our various technical departments for these productions.
Well, I can definitely appreciate wearing multiple hats. I'm, doing the same here tonight. I really learn sound in dive bars, which is, just about every possible thing that you can think of that's going to be a challenge to work with happens there. You've got a loud crowd, you've got potentially horrible surfaces for acoustics, because if you got a rough and tumble bar, you don't have a whole lot of tapestries hanging on the walls. There's not like did we lose you there for a second?
Yeah, now you're back. Now I see you.
Okay.
So you probably just asked me something very interesting and I didn't hear it.
So I was asking, what was your greatest challenge doing sound in those dive bar days? Because there's just so many things that go wrong when you're in that setting, as far as terrible acoustics, terrible audiences, terrible bands, and just talk a little bit about what, what was probably the worst night sound wise, and like, you feel you came out on top, or was that one of those learning experiences?
I think the most consistent difficult things were power. So, a lot of noise, a lot of, um, it wasn't uncommon to blow a breaker because they told you it was a 20 amp breaker and it's actually being shared with the dishwasher or whatever it is, so, and getting all the buzzing sounds in like bad old buildings. So being able to kind of think through that stuff very quickly. Okay, is this this bass player, I know his amp usually makes noise, but is it worse than usual because of the building? And then the other consistent challenge for me in those settings is that the band likes to be really loud on stage. So their amps, their monitors, their years of loud amps and monitors, which mean often reduced hearing ability. And, that's a lot of the time you're fighting that as the person who's like mixing out front, because you're in a small space with a bunch of hard surfaces, and the audience is hearing more, sometimes more of the singer's voice coming through their own monitor reflecting off of the wall than they are out of the actual PA. So I think in those kinds of settings, you kind of learn to mix less. You kind of learn to be like, well, it's not really the voice tone I want because it's coming out of his monitor off of the back wall. But rather than turning everything up, let's just try to work with that that monitor level, blending in with the rest of the house. So those are the most consistent things. I mean, there were other, always stuff that comes up.
I think that also point about you can't always turn up something to fix the problem. That's a lesson everyone learns at some point trying to do sound, where sounds terrible, crowd's loud, so you just keep sliding that slider, and at some point it's like, this ain't helping. Nothing I'm doing here is making anything better. Yep. You kind of have to just back everything back and find that happy place and work it back.
Yeah, absolutely. And almost think about it like a game of how quiet can I make it and still have it be balanced. And, that's usually not very quiet, but it seems to help in those settings. But.
Well, the audience will sometimes get quieter if they can't hear the band, but they're never going to get quieter.
Yeah, true story. Yeah.
Let's take it back to those days for a little bit longer. What was the kind of the first?
Oh no, I lost you again.
Did I lose you there again?
Yeah, you're back now.
Okay. We did a whole TechTonic on broadband and why it's hard to come by. So I'm just proving our point. Anyway, so to roll that back, we were talking, what's kind of the first mixer you got your hands on that you could actually do something with, as opposed to just kind of hitting a couple times and like turning up the volume? What was that first piece of gear that felt like I'm doing a job here?
There was an old analog Allen and Heath console. I think it was a 48 input and 8 output, and it had a little matrix, and it had like a bunch of stuff going on for a live mixer. No fancy, no built-in compressors or nice things like that, or digital routing. But that's the one that I learned on, and I didn't own it. The guy that I first worked for, that's the console that he had, and showed me how to use, and it did the whole okay, we're gonna patch the reverb in using this cable, and I was glad I got to catch a little bit of the kind of the last common years of analog live sound. I know people absolutely still do analog live sound, but it's more specific, and you're not doing it because it's the cost-effective thing anymore. You're doing it because you really want that sound, and you know what you're up to.
When you get people like, oh, it's just come so far, even in the last like 5 or 6 years. I've got like a 10-year-old little 12-track mixer, and it's both bigger than newer ones, far more limited. And I was blown away. Played a gig a couple of years ago. Guy had one of the true digital ones where he's doing the sound from his iPad in the audience, and I think that's just awesome, because I'm not, you're not stuck in the worst. Because usually when you're playing a small room, you don't get to have the soundboard in a place where you want to have the soundboard. You have the soundboard in the place where the crowd won't step on the soundboard. And just to have the technology come in. Here we are talking about tech. All right, finally got around to it. When you can walk around through the audience and really hear how the sound is from every possible vantage point, it's just so much easier to work with. Is that the sort of system you guys are working with there now, where everything is digital and you can control it remotely?
Yeah, and it's actually, the console at the Center for the Arts is an Allen and Heath, which I hadn't actually connected back. So it's the same brand as the first one I started on, but it's their digital, their monster digital console, and it's way up there above the top seats. So it's not in an ideal listening position either. I mean, they're because you have to, even in a really nice venue like this, the priority is to get the nice seats to the people who are paying for tickets. But we do have a Wi-Fi router, and I can walk around with the iPad and listen to things, which I'm sure will be really useful once we start using the room again. I mean, a big thing I've learned doing these live streams is just how to, because most of my experience has been controlling for the room, figuring out like, okay, what's the deficiency? What's getting amplified just by the space? Who's turning up too loud? On this stage in a live stream setting, if the drummer's playing really loud, it doesn't have nearly as much impact. I mean, it's still going to bleed into the vocal mic, so it will get to the live stream, somehow, but it's not the same balancing act as if you had people in the room and you're having to deal with that. So the iPad thing will be really cool when we get back to that point where being able to like walk around and adjust things as you go. It also helps. I mean, it's when you're doing so I'm always mixing front of house sound for the audience, and then also mixing monitors at the same time. So to have the ability to walk on stage and to listen to what the people are hearing in their monitors and adjust, not have to run back up, it's a real luxury.
Super awesome. So let's talk a little bit about that lovely room behind you there. Now, this is pretty much night and day from those early dive bars, in that the center is not a whole bunch of hard surfaces and loud people clamoring for more beer. And they might be clamoring for more beer, but they're usually pretty respectful about the music. What's changed from the old room as far as acoustics? Can you speak to that a little bit, as far as like what's different? I know the stage direction changed, and that's going to affect everything. Mm-hmm. What else has happened there?
I can talk a little bit about it. I never got to work in the old center, so I'm not like, I went to hear some shows there, so I'm not an authority on that matter. But I can tell you some of the things that they've done to this new room. It's a little hard to see in the pictures, but kind of this area of the wall, all around the walls, that's all. It's like a 1.5 inch soundproofing material that goes all around there, including up in the tech gallery. Yeah, it's fantastic.
Wow.
And it's still a big room with a big domed ceiling, so you get a lot of mid-range, and there's some. It's not a dead room by any means. It's still very live in that way, but they really did their homework to control for some of the problem frequencies, and do the install right. This kind of level below that on the wall is a thicker fiberglass, so because you're further down, so there aren't any hard surfaces all the way up, which is very helpful. And then behind, so this you wouldn't be able to see, but upstage, so behind the performers, there's a big flat wall, but then there are a couple of curtains that get pulled during the show itself that kind of help out with that. We've had a couple of people come in for the live streams who they'll start playing while the back curtains are still open, and especially the more sensitive players. I think it was when Natalie Haas came in and played, she was very quick to say like, "Oh, is that going to be, is that curtain going to be open? Because I can hear myself, that slap come right back." And yeah, so it's nice to be able to have those abilities instead of like, well, what could we put up there? Like, I'm not going to be wearing my jacket, so maybe trying to kind of improvise that way.
I mean, that's just about everything you could possibly hope for as far as helping make the room sound better. Now, I'm assuming a lot of these things were chosen and developed for a large room. How is the challenge different when you have this empty space with someone, particularly like Kyle Lidson or Natalie Haas, where their instruments are loud by themselves? It's not a finger-picked acoustic guitar singer-songwriter like that mandolin and that she plays cello, right, Natalie?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Uh-huh.
Like those things sing in the room itself. So how is that to work with this big open space?
So far it's good. It's going to be much better when we have a whole lot of humans, like a whole lot of portable water baffles sitting in those seats will be very helpful. But those instruments, the acoustic instruments are quiet enough that it's not. You could probably walk, 30 feet back from the stage, and you can tell that those instruments are far away. You start to lose them, so that the room's not.
Okay.
It's controlled enough that works. For the live streams, it actually over time is something that I've experimented with, and I'm still experimenting with, is trying to get some of that dimension back, for especially if people are listening on headphones or over a laptop. And I'm not, for me, it's a new thing because haven't done a lot of studio mixing or a lot of like trying to mix without the room in there. So if you go back and look at like the Alistair Fraser, Natalie Haas video, I think you'll catch sometimes like there's a couple of room mics out in front of the stage that are trying to stay out of the way of the camera, but get a little bit of their actual acoustic playing. There's a little flat boundary mic that's like under their feet that catches a little bit of that reflection. So, and usually I'm trying to mix some of that back in and experiment a little bit with getting a more, I guess it's sort of a more natural sound in addition to the artificial reverbs. And I like artificial reverbs, but in addition to those, it's been helpful to have some more mics in the room to try to get some of that.
Well, that's real cool, because I feel like that's part of the experience that people really want out of these live streams, where it's you're trying to envision it as a concert, not just guys playing for you from his living room like we've all been doing. And I think particularly watching like the last few, the Kyle Lidson and Achilles Wheel, where it's like they're putting on a show. And the other side of this that we haven't gotten into that is very, very dependent on tech is the lighting. And I feel that's really what sets these series apart from your standard performer in their backyard, performer in their living room, where they might have pro level camera, might be lit well, but they don't have that light show. They don't have that full big old stage experience. So I know very little about lighting. I just know it looks cool and looks great. So I'd love to hear what you have to say about that side of the equation.
Sure. Yeah, we have a fantastic lighting director named George Jane, who's been doing all of the live stream shows. We also have a really nice lighting package that you can catch a little bit of, up here. So most of our lights are on, beams. They're probably 12 feet apart, and I think they're 5 different points where they're hung up there. And then we have some that you probably saw that are also on the ground, to get, different angles on things and to do a little bit more of the cool patterns. So the moving lights, we have 6 moving lights that are hung and 4 that are on the ground. And that's a lot of the cool stuff, a lot of the fun, programmable stuff. And then, of course, we've got all kinds of other lights that George very tastefully blends and shifts into all different kinds of color patterns. One of the things that we worked with kind of as a group, and I know George worked a lot with at first, was trying to figure out, just like with sound, lights don't look the same in the room as they do on a screen. So we started out with him doing lights the way he usually does, looking at the stage, and we'd watch the performances back and be like, this is too dark, or I did all these things that you can't really see, because the moving light doesn't translate as well for whatever reason. So over time, he's ended up now when he mixes, he can see the stage, but he also has a 48-inch television right next to him that has the actual feed, and for me, with no lighting background, it's pretty amazing to look at that and then look over at the screen and know that this is the same thing happening in real time, but it translates very differently in terms of color and dimension. We had some shows too, if I remember right, where we're sort of learning that you have to do a lot more side and backlighting than you would in a live setting in order to get someone to look 3-dimensional, because otherwise it looks like I look now with my virtual background.
Yeah.
So that's definitely been an experience for George too, and that relationship with our camera operators and camera director, because then even once you get the lighting piece kind of figured out, each camera is going to translate the lighting in a different way depending on its intensity settings and its angle, whether the house lights are on or off. That's not something we were thinking about at first, and now we do most of our shows with the house lights on because it helps the cameras see everything a little bit better, which if we ever go to hybrid shows, we'll have to figure out, because we'll need the house lights off again. So we'll figure that out when we get there.
So how many cameras are involved in this? Multiple operators? Because so far we've been talking a lot about pretty much a live music experience that happens to be live streamed. This is a central piece. This is the putting it on camera, putting it online part. So how does it get onto the web from your stage? What's involved there?
Yeah. So typically, some of the shows have been different, but our standard format is the center owns 3 identical cameras, and then we own a 4th camera that's a little remote control camera that it's a different brand, and it's got a whole different look to it. So we use those 3 cameras that are the same. There's usually one in the risers right about there, and that one's usually doesn't have an operator. That's typically got the sort of the resting shot that the director will go back to, sometimes in between songs, or sometimes if there's a technical difficulty, that's just kind of like, okay, here's the one that looks good no matter what. And then about 20 feet back into the audience, away from the stage, on a raised platform, on this side, there's another camera that has an operator, and then there's a mirror image one on this side, typically. And those, sometimes they'll change if it's a smaller band, like if it's Kyle playing solo, sometimes those will be a little closer together, depending on who's directing and who's operating. So we usually have a couple of really fantastic camera operators who will do that. And then usually right behind George, who does lights, and myself, who does sound, we'll have someone who is doing, who's directing the cameras. So they're hooked up on a headset, a wireless headset, and they'll be telling each camera operator what type of shot they would like and when they're live, you know, because sometimes camera operators have to do stuff like this to get the shot. So they need to know that they're not on air while they're doing that. And our system is, it's working, but that's the video system. The lights and the sound are top notch, and they were designed to be that way and well funded. The video system was like, all right, how do we make this work for, you know, for the COVID times? So we don't have things like, you know, super heavy tripods that you would have at a broadcast studio, or, you know, lights that would tell the camera operator when their cameras are live. So that piece of it's been a little bit more experimental, I guess, even though most of the operators we have had experience working on that more pro-grade equipment. And then over here, my finger's disappearing. So if you go, like if you're in the tech gallery and you go off like through this wall, there's a little room here that was originally designed to be a broadcast room, because we had hoped to do some broadcasts even before COVID. We did not know that it was going to get quite as much use as it has gotten. But that's where our streaming device is, and we use a Wirecast device, a Telestream device that it's basically a PC computer that they've spec'd out with SDI cards and the components that they think are going to make the streaming experience be stable, which has been in general pretty good. So we can take 4 different SDI inputs into that, and then we can stream it out with stability and consistency. We can stream it out to 3 or 4 different places. We found that if we go much higher than that, then we have to, like you probably know, we have to start like cutting resolution, or, you know, crossing our fingers and hoping nothing crashes, or, you know. So we've tried to keep to our like YouTube, Facebook, and third source if needed, and then a record. We were set up for live switching. So we have another device, a Blackmagic device, that can take multiple cameras in, and someone can control it to say which one they want the audience to actually see. That one has 8 inputs. So over time, something that's changed is that now we use that as our primary switching device, and the camera director will be making all of their decisions on that device. And then we just send one signal from there into the computer that does the streaming. So it takes a little bit of weight off of that computer. It also means that if something goes wrong with the stream, there's a dedicated technician to figure it out. So before, the camera director was also managing the stream like you are today. And if something goes wrong in the middle of the show, not only can they, not only do they have difficulty directing, but it's all on the same computer. So even if they had an assistant or someone to help them, you know, it gets a little hairy. So that's how we've been doing it. We have the 2 operators, 3 cameras, director, and then we have our camera director, and then we have the person running the stream. And the person who's running the stream also puts up, that's the person who displays graphics and videos and overlays. And they run the little remote control camera that like does close-ups on the audience. And because of COVID, we haven't had camera operators on stage in some time. So we have that remote control camera positioned to where it can get some of the things that we can't get to.
That's pretty awesome. Now, speaking of videos, uh, you know, some of these performers, this has been the one time they've played out this whole year. Some have done, maybe a few small shows here and there, maybe the backyard thing, but this is their chance to be on a real stage, to have that light show, to have that experience. So I want to play a little video here I got from Kyle Ledson, who clearly just loved his experience, and I'll let him tell you all about it.
So when I found out I was gonna play at the Center for the Arts, I was so stoked. I had sat in with ALO for their Tour de Amour a couple years prior, and I was dying to get back to that place. And it was such a pleasant surprise to be able to play there under COVID when no one's performing. And so when I got there, I was absolutely blown away by the remodel that they had done. The stage was in a whole different spot. I was almost kind of confused at first, but it was so amazing, all the things they've done there. The light system is amazing, the sound is amazing, and the whole design of the room is awesome. And everyone there is just so nice, and it was so easy to work with. Conrad is my favorite sound guy out here. Super fun to work with, super easy, and he does a great job. And it was just such a fun experience. Like, the green room was amazing. And it was just a rejuvenating thing to be able to play live music like that, even without an audience, because it had been quite a long time since I had played any type of live music in front of an audience. So yeah, the experience was just so much fun, and I would love to do that again sometime.
So, I mean, you see just how enthusiastic he was about it. Um, it really is the thing where I think you guys really filled a void there. You know, maybe less for the audience's sake and more for the musician's sake, honestly, because people need an outlet. It's been a long year without much performing, and I've personally relished every chance I've had. Now, we kind of talked about your early sound career. You've done a lot of sound in your life. What was the transition like when you started taking on more of, okay, now I have to look at, now I'm a movie director? Is there someone that was brought on to be the visual side of that, to let you focus on the sound? How's that all coming together?
Yeah, I'm definitely not a movie director. I would I that is a great aspiration. So right these last few months since I've been the technical director at the center, we have I guess we have four really talented camera directors who kind of rotate and come and do these shows. So that's been huge for me with uh, very little video background. The only video background I had before was like you know set up for corporate events, and like, okay, I know how SDI works, and the technical components, none of the artistic components. So it's been huge to have experienced directors, and our camera people have also been really experienced in a variety, from doing corporate things to doing film. And I think some of our camera folks have done both like small scale, their own small film competitions, and also worked on much larger crews. So that perspective has been invaluable, and I'm always trying to, like, listen and learn from them about the broadcast side of things. So I don't do a whole lot of the artistic direction. Once the show starts, I'm mostly just the sound guy and the oh no, something went wrong with the stream emergency guy. But that doesn't happen too often lately. So there's a really good team there. Part of my role is just to, or I guess most of my role is to coordinate that team and get them to communicate beforehand and figure out if they need anything in particular, before the show happens.
Now, looking down the road, you're now the technical director. Are you going to be adding on a sound guy to free yourself up more to focus on managing everything else? Or are you holding on to that role for dear life because you love it?
I love doing sound. You'd have to ask my boss what her plans are for the. I have no idea. I have no idea. But I love doing sound, and that's where my interest in. I hope that's where my continued role lies. So we'll see. It's a.
Now, we talked a little bit earlier, looking down the road, bringing in maybe hybrid performances where you've got partial capacity room, where you're still aiming to live stream with that. Are you looking to potentially long-term mount micro cameras so that the whole thing can be happening at the same time, or is that going to kind of slowly go away as the room fills up more with people?
That is a good question. So the thoughts that people are talking about so far are that on the one hand, audiences would like to continue to have live streams. On the other hand, at least before COVID, artists didn't like for their live shows to be broadcast a lot of the time because there's a perception that it discourages in-person ticket sales. So I don't know what that's going to look like, post-COVID, when venues get back to full capacity. I know that we're planning to be able to continue to live stream, but a lot of it's going to have to do with the negotiations with specific artists and how they're feeling about it. I imagine there would be some artists who would be enthusiastic to have live stream performance at the same time as their live audience. Like in particular, some people with niche draws or international draws might know that their fan base is going to come out and see them in person, but they also want their fan base in Europe to be able to see them, for a lesser ticket price. So for us, for the technical side of things, we're thinking now about ways to kind of small changes. Like, could we, if we have a crowd in here, how are we going to run our wires in a way that's safe? Because right now it looks like a film set or a working site. There's like stuff that you wouldn't want audience to have to deal with. So, you started thinking about like, okay, well, if we, put them up and, do the platforms in this way so we don't block that seating. So we've talked a little bit about that, but it's very hypothetical at this point. It's sort of like, okay, we want to know that we have a plan for being able to do this, but we don't know if on the one hand, we don't know if there'll still be demand from audiences, like everybody might be burned out on the virtual stuff when this is over, or if there'll be artists who are wanting that to happen.
Very cool. I mean, I think one of the coolest things about having all of this going on is, regardless of whether an artist wants a show to be live streamed or not, you guys now have the capability to offer full performance video, which is one of those things that, probably pre-COVID, that wasn't necessarily on your radar, where it was, if someone wants to hire a videographer and film, great, but it's not like an expectation of, oh, we have this capability, we have the option. So as a performer, I just love the idea of potentially, the place I'm playing also say, oh, hey, can you make a movie of this too? And I think that's gonna be one of those things that it's gonna be one of those perks that people are looking for down the road of, okay, are you still set up to live stream? Can you record this? Can you make this happen? We've danced around the other side of what it takes to live stream a little bit, partially with my technical glitches. What connection are you guys on there? Have you had issues with that at all as far as bandwidth, or how's that gone for you guys? Because everyone always asks, what's your speed in Nevada County?
Yeah, it's our Comcast has been pretty stable. We have a Comcast business plan because we're right there in Grass Valley, which is helpful. I don't know what speed we're billed for, but when I test our upload speed, before a show, it's usually between 25 and 32. So it's, we've got a nice little bandwidth there. So our internet's been pretty consistent. We have had, I gotta say, the only part of these whole shows that I dread is the 5 minutes before the show when we hit the go live on the streaming device and we're like, okay, it worked. Like it worked during rehearsal, like just like with you tonight. So even with consistent internet, it's like, is Facebook going to decide it doesn't like us tonight? Was there, an update, particularly because we're only streaming every 2 weeks, and I'm in there checking for computer, software and firmware updates, no problem. But did Facebook make a change that I wasn't tuned into, or that our, streaming person wasn't tuned into this time? So we've had some things come up like that, and they almost always come up right before the show starts. So that's a very nerve-wracking. But once that's, once everything's stable, then it's back to being a show again, and people can get into the artistic side of it. For the most part, I think we had one show. Nope, we haven't had any crashes during the show. It's all, if we've had trouble, it's always been at the very beginning, and it's been either fixed or decided to, only use 2 platforms instead of 3, instead of the one that wasn't working. So, yeah, the streaming part is that is I think nerve-wracking for everybody, even for our person who's operating the machine, who knows a lot more about it and is more like confident in dealing with those problems. They still come up, and there's limited time.
So what, there's a lot of options out there for how to multi-stream. What solution are you guys using? Have you used a couple different services over this period, or have you had good luck sticking with one? Because something I've played around with for sure. I've used both Caster and Restream and Streamlabs, and there's always a downside no matter what you're using. How did it go for you guys?
So we haven't had to use a third-party service like that, fortunately, because we have Wirecast software. So our Telestream software will send to multiple sources, and it'll send to as many, as I believe it'll send to as many outputs as you want it to, but it does caution you that if you go over 4, it starts running out of processing power. So we typically, since we went over to doing ticketed shows, now we only go to 2 sources and a record, and that's like well within the capability of the bandwidth and also of the the CPU and the video processing card on the the computer, the streaming device itself. I've talked to some musicians who have used Restream, and it seems like it's like works when it works, and it can be a headache otherwise. But we haven't. For us, everything happens within that Wirecast Pro software. And
that's just so cool too, because Telestream is a local company. How did you guys come to be using their gear? Was that just what you had on hand? Was it a conscious choice to support local? How did the center and Telestream come together there?
Yeah, well, the Telestream's been a longtime sponsor of of WorldFest and of center events. So when we started doing this, Telestream actually donated that computer and a year of the software coverage to us, which was fantastic. I mean, I don't know. It is expensive, I believe. I don't know what it retails for, but it was a very generous and helpful donation. So, and because they're a local company and they're right here, and there are a lot of people that work there that are interested in the center, they're also like fantastic tech support. Like, I think I get the impression that they have really good tech support anyway, but it's nice to be able to call them and know that you're calling someone up the street and, oh yeah, our one of our primary Wirecast techs, his name is Jim, so it'll be like, oh yeah, it's Jim at the center, and like it's nice that a international business has that kind of connection to what we're doing here.
Super cool. I mean, that takes a lot of the technical challenge out of it, because for a lot of, and again, I think this is why a musician like Kyle was so appreciative of coming in doing the performance, having everything taken care of. Because if you're doing it at home, you're trying to do all of this yourself, and maybe your laptop battery dies. Whoops. Maybe Restream doesn't want to work. Maybe Facebook doesn't want to work. So the fact that you have the ability, thanks to local companies, to just go straight to each source is really valuable, because it's not going to matter on YouTube if Facebook goes down. It's not going to matter on YouTube if Facebook goes down. So that's just awesome. Now, we are approaching the end of our hour here, so I want to play the other video I had queued up here, which is the intro video you sent me. Anything you want to say about this as I queue it up?
Yeah, so this is a really cool montage that we had a local videographer come to a couple shows and put together, and it just gives you a little taste of the fun part of the setup process. So.
Well, let's check it out so you can see what we've been talking about. So that was real cool to see. Really bring to life a little bit what we've been talking about. Those lights, man, just really excellent caliber there. Yeah, this has been a real cool chance to catch up with the center. What's coming down the pike here in the near future that you're excited about presenting and doing sound for here?
So we're hoping we've got a 4 more from the center series, so our live stream series, and then depending on how everything goes, we're hoping to do some outdoor events this summer. So we don't have dates or locations yet because it just will depend a lot on what tier the county's in and what we can do. But there'll probably be limited capacity outdoor shows, and we're hoping to either stream those live or to record them and make them available for streaming later, especially because we know that the in-person audience will probably be limited. So yeah, so I think I'm hoping that's what the summer is going to look like, is getting some outdoor stuff and getting hopefully a few more people there for the outside shows to actually, because it's a different kind of connection, I think, that you get with a musical performance when you're sharing space. So that'll be a great thing. And then hopefully we can also bring a lot of our broadcast team along, either as a recording videographer team or maybe as a live stream team, if we can figure out how to get the bandwidth we need on site.
Very cool. So we're going to bring it back to sound for one last question here for you. As you look forward to doing maybe some outside shows, do you like doing outside shows, mixing sound outdoors, or is it so wildly different for you? Because I have mixed feelings about it. Sometimes I love doing it, and sometimes it's like I just wish there was a ceiling.
I love doing outside shows. I really like it. But you're right. You lose that reflection and a lot of that natural room sound. But I really like it. I also like, just being inside. So maybe it's the environment that biases me in that direction. But
Well, I think we're all looking forward to getting out there and seeing some shows, even if it's in the parking lot in a small crew. Can't wait to have you dealing with a loud crowd, screaming in there, making your life difficult. All of those things that used to annoy you, just can't wait to have to deal with. Any last thoughts you got, Conrad?
No, I think this is great. Thanks a lot for having me along. It's been a good time talking.
Well, as we said at the start, this has been a long time coming. I'm glad that finally got to connect with someone from the center. It's been a great time chatting. I'm David Clark Carroll with the Nevada County Tech Connection. You've been listening to me talk with Conrad Sisk, the technical director at the Center for the Arts, sound man extraordinaire, and apparently during these whole live stream things, a juggler as well. So hope you all enjoyed. Have a wonderful Tuesday night.